Well, afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the fourth series in our conversation around ESG. My thanks again for Ian for joining us. Ian, you'll be glad this is your last one now, so you'll be relieved after this one. Today, we're going to focus on governance. So if you are just watching us back today, please do take the time to jump back and watch the opening introduction around ESG, environment and social. But today we're going to dig into governance. I know a dry topic for many. I know many business owners love to avoid generally governance and think it's something that restricts and drags the business back. And I'm hoping today we'll just explore a little bit more about what we mean by governance and actually how it aids you running and managing the business and can offer support and guidance to everyone who's part of your organization. So governance for me, I see very much in three parts. The first part about how we run and manage the business every day. So the use of data and insights, the use of delegated authorities and how we control what we do as a business. The second area is the external tests we set ourselves through our accreditations and our benchmarking. And I'll ask Ian to explore that with us shortly. And then the third area is how we invite external opinion and expert opinion from other fields into our business to help us form and define our strategy moving forward. So as always, in this mini-series, will be about 20 minutes. We'll take you through what we do across all three of those areas and hopefully give you some areas to maybe think about incorporating within your business. So let's jump right back and start on that first point around how we manage and control the business. And Ian, feel free to kind of jump in on this topic as well. So for me, what's really important in the business is that people have got absolute clarity on purpose, a real understanding about what their role is and how their role makes a difference to our organization. So the first thing that we would look at is the defining and setting of our business outcomes. And we like to do this every 12 months to keep them up to date, to keep them fresh, to keep them aligned to our overall strategy. Those business outcomes will come down to individual objectives, and everyone within our organization will have individual objectives set, and they can see the trajectory to our overall business outcome for that year. That's a really important part of the process for me in defining everyone's role so everyone has clarity of understanding. A core part of how we then run the business is what we class as our delegated authorities. So who do we give accountability and responsibility for which parts of our business? And I mean in all aspects. So financial authorities, decision-making authorities, how we're empowering people to drive forward our outcomes as a business. So that overall governance matrix needs to be incredibly clear. People need to know when they're able to make a decision. People need to know when they're straying outside of what's been delegated to them, and they need rapid response from other people. What's really important is that governance doesn't get in the way of running the business. Sales and new business is a great example for us, where we have delegated authorities all the way down to our individual salespeople, our sales managers, our chief sales officer, all the way up then to the CEO and CFO. What's important, though, is that we can manage that on a timely basis, is that you understand at the outset, ultimately, where do I need this decision being made? Can I make it myself? Great. Am I asking the right questions? Do I have the right information? I'm now empowered to make this decision, and I should take that responsibility serious. If I know I need the CFO's sign off for a particular deal, how do I manage and plan that alongside my deal timeline so that sign off does not become a constraint? What have I learned from presenting to the CFO before that I know they're always going to need? How do I make sure I secure the approval in this first stage rather than having to go back around that loop 2 or 3 times? And I think that cycle of governance is incredibly important. Ian, I know in many roles that we've worked together, you've managed typically those delegated authorities for us and defined what they look like. So anything you'd want to add, particularly about how you set and define those authorities within an organization?
Yes. One of the first things we started to look at was that, for the reasons you mentioned, because without a clear picture of what you can and can't do as an individual, what you're approved, authorized to do. You can't really work quickly or know that you need to ask for approval. So we did that piece of work a while ago, and we worked with the teams to agree it. And very recently, we've gone through that approvals matrix again with the decision makers and the people who are involved in it. So when we came to dust it down, like everything you need to review it, what actually happened was the commercial team took the first review of a revised draft because things had changed. And then we involved the sales team in saying, we think the next draft should look like this. How does it feel to you? And then we eventually got to a position where both the commercial, the finance, and the sales team felt like the approvals matrix was set at the right level and then that was presented to you as the CEO to say, we think this is how we'd like it to work. And I think with a very couple of minor changes, we signed that off. But I do think, as you say, people need to understand what they can approve. And if they can't approve something, what do I then need? And who do they need it from? And then it's about efficiency and getting it moving quickly. Yeah. Your comment about what we got better at, because when it first came in, you'll find it's difficult and it might slow the business down because it's new and people forget and it stops and it's clunky, don't like this. But what we actually found was over a period of time, people learned the rules, learned what was expected from them, knew what the next person in the chain needed to see in order to approve something quickly. And that happens a lot more quickly now. And on top of that, we've also got some software that helps us with that approval process. In the absence of the approval process and the software itself, it was all a little bit Wild West. But that's not quite the case now. It's very much more well governed, but pretty efficient too.
And I guess what's also important, Ian, and been speaking historically to lots of business owners who feel it's their role as CEO or founder to own every decision. Particularly if there's finance involved. And I guess I'd say to organizations where every decision is taken at the top, think about how that feels for the people working for you. The lack of trust, the lack of empowerment, the lack of fulfillment in their role, being unable to make a decision with their teams. And I think that can be incredibly disruptive to a business. Equally, I'd speak to those kind of CEOs and founders who are not involved in any of the decision making at all and who've delegated everything. And think about some of those biggest decisions that your team are making. You should be in that room having that conversation. They will define your future. And for me, it's always about balance. So how do we give people that authority and that empowerment to make decisions, but still have the control in the business for the things that really materially affect us? And as you say, we review that often. I think we've reflected on, we've probably can give more responsibility further down in the organization, because actually, as those decisions have been coming up, we've just approved every one. Yep, I think looking and reflecting to say, what's this governance done? If it's just always saying yes in every scenario, we'll maybe think about empowering those people further to make those decisions.
Yeah.
The other aspect in terms, I think, of just governance around the business is being really clear about the data you use and the insights you have, which control what's important in your business. As we've said before, and I started this whole LinkedIn series originally around driving insights and using data to run a more efficient organization. In our business, there's maybe 5 or 6 real key levers that we control and manage every day. And I'd ask you to sit and reflect, what are those data points that really affect your business? When everything's said and done, and we can all think we're a very complicated business and there's lots of things going on. But in every business I've ever run, there's maybe 4 to 6 aspects which are just actually the levers which control the business. Are you looking at them regularly enough? Do you understand the trends? Are those causing you to take action when you're deviating from your path that you've defined? So for me, a combination of delegated authorities, empowerment, and a real use and control on the data of the things which are absolutely important in your business would be how I'd kind of start on this conversation through governance. And I think if you can get those aspects right, it gives you the time to think about how you can drive the organization forward and take some of the guesswork out how you're performing. So why don't we move on to the second stage? And Ian, I'm just going to ask if you can talk us through how we set external validation benchmarking standards for the business and the types of accreditations we've been through.
Yeah, again, when we looked at governance, there's one of the things that I think is important to those outside our organisation is that you can demonstrate through some external certifications that you walk the walk as well as talk the talk. So it's holding yourself to account by a recognised external third body. So one of the things we've done across all of our businesses is choose those ISO certifications that we then thought were most relevant to us this particular point in our journey. So we've got 3 ISO certifications that centre around security, 27001, centered around quality, which is 9001, and the environment, 14001. So every year we'll hold ourselves against those internationally recognized standards. We will be audited against them. And so far we've been successful every year, and we're able to demonstrate externally that we are very well governed in those areas, not by our own judgment, but by an international standard. And then there are other, I won't list them all, but there are other things that we want to hold ourselves to high account with, like we need to be a safe contractor. So again, we've got to look after our staff. We want to install our sites in a very safe manner. Well, it's all right just doing that, but how can we satisfy ourselves that we are holding ourselves to the right standards, and B, demonstrate to the people who want to work with us that they're working with a client that isn't going to have their people taking fingers off with angle grinders in the middle of the afternoon installing something. So it's
not that's the situation that's happened, but
no. Oh my God, it was first us. So it's about us holding ourselves to a standard internally, but also being able to demonstrate that to an external client without them needing to worry about it, because it's an external certification. Things like, maybe one other I would mention is Cyber Essentials. So when we acquired the businesses, we weren't Cyber Essentials certified. We now are. We're just going through that recertification process this month, actually. And then next year, we're committed to Cyber Essentials Plus. So we'll see ourselves raise that bar again. A consistent message that I've been saying through all of these series is all of these things demand time and effort, and it's easy to look away from them, but they always result in, I believe, an increased positive upside. Yeah. So when we become Cyber Essentials Plus certificated, which we will be next year, next step, your insurance has become cheaper. You're more attractive to companies who care about their personal data, which they should, because you've demonstrated you've got checks and balances in place with a recognized standard. So it's time, it's effort, but for me, it's always worth it. It's always worth it for the right reasons, which is, and if you're concerned about looking after personal data, it's right that you do, but it's also right for the commercial reasons, because people will want to work with organizations that demonstrate they do that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think those accreditations are also really important when bidding for new work. You know, yep. Increasingly now we see clients setting those as a minimum level of ability to bid. But I think it's also broader in terms of those external accreditations. So we're an NHS mindful employer, we're a disability confident employer. Again, setting your standards and those external tests, as we call them, for me is really important. You know, and thinking about what's relevant to your business. You know, you may want to consider, if you have a significant workforce, something like an Investors in People accreditation, to say, are we managing and developing and promoting all of the right aspects of our people development plan? And that's, again, something that we're currently considering looking at as an additional external standard. A couple of things I would say is, one is 100% agree with you. This needs time, commitment, and a conscious decision to achieve these standards, but also to then embed these standards within everything you do within the business. I guess in every business we've worked with historically, and that's come with someone we've employed to manage that whole process, to manage the accreditation, to manage the compliance, and almost to run that test on a monthly, regular basis, rather than it just being a one-off annual accreditation. And it's I would say if you're doing it for the badge, if you're doing it for the accreditation, it's just not worth doing. You know, the challenge of going through an annual audit, if it's not embedded within your business, for me, you're not really testing yourself organizationally. You're just looking to attach a badge, which for me kind of devalues the whole purpose. So I think setting those external tests is really important, but embedding within the business those standards is even more important. And I'd almost say to somebody, align yourself to the standard and embed it, rather than just go and get the badge every year and not bother. I think that's more important, and I think you'll see more value. Back to your point, Ian.
Just on that point, Paul, I would add to anyone who's interested in going on those journeys, if they don't do what you've just suggested, which is embed them and do them routinely, it's terribly difficult to achieve them at the end of the year when you're rushing around trying to demonstrate you do these things, because you're not going to demonstrate you do these things. So one of the things you have to demonstrate is you're doing these things routinely throughout the year. So again, to echo what you said, you've got to do it. It has to become part of your business, or it's very, very difficult to ever get those certifications.
Yeah, I think probably in one of the areas which gives us most value as a leadership team is our risk review. And you know, I guess if I ever said I had a trade, it would be kind of project and program management, where you know risk and issue management's a fundamental part of delivering projects and delivering change. But looking at risk management properly at a business level for me is so important. Being able to think about those issues we talk about all the time, but actually to give you the structure to be taking action and to preventing those issues or risks occurring in the future through some thoughtful and conscious actions ahead of time, for me, so important. You know, I've sat in lots of leadership teams where we talk about some of the uncontrollables, some of the things in the future that might happen, but we can't do anything about. And then a few months later, maybe it happens, and then we run around thinking, what do we do now? And I think, you know, forcing yourselves, and again, having that process of risk and issue management in the business, the ability for people to feel safe to document concerns in the future, in the scenario of risk, or document concerns that is happening right now in the scenario of issues, and engaging management at the appropriate level is really important. What's, you know, some of the unmeasurables in our businesses, the work we've done around risk mitigation that has never occurred, and being able to close risk that didn't occur because we've taken action. And I often reflect and think, what would have actually happened in that scenario? How much more time, money, investments would we have spent if we hadn't have been proactive, and if we hadn't have thought about taking those actions before that scenario occurred? Risk management sounds really dull to lots of people, and it's an area I think many business owners, people in a leadership team would rather just not deal with. And all I would say is you can choose to not deal with it proactively, but you absolutely will. I absolutely guarantee you will be dealing with it reactively, which is much, much more painful. And forcing ourselves every quarter to go through our entire risk log, to look at all of those areas of real concern, test ourselves we're taking the right proactive actions, or even in some scenarios where it is truly out of our control, just being mindful that that risk still occurs and we need to be thinking about what happens is such a, you know, important part of our governance structure. We had a risk that, you know, there could be a change of government. We could go down a different political route. Now, you know, we can't influence that, and obviously that happened earlier than we'd expected, but we'd thought through some of the things that we would do in terms of our early engagement with the Labour Party, as was now the government. And what's been great, I think, through some of that proactive work, we've actually now established and built some good links into government as a result of thinking historically that might change and putting that time and energy in up front. And for me, that's been really important. I know, Ian, you kind of chair our risk review along with Janet, who runs our compliance. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add to that point, or
no, I would agree with all that, Paul. I mean, I think you ignore risk management at your peril. I think naturally, as a business, you can see yourself grow, and you see exciting new bid wins and exciting new developments in software that may win you some more business. That's all the new stuff. That's looking out to what can we do new. And if all you ever do is that, and you don't actually look inwards and go, well, what are some of the things that fundamental to our business now that we just need to look after as well? I see risk management, it just keeps you honest. So all the stuff that is exciting and we will see the business grow, that will get our attention because it's exciting. But the stuff that we need to pay some real attention to, which is, you know, a little bit dull and a little bit boring, perhaps not as exciting, but super important, it forces you to look at those areas, and it makes you come up with mitigations. Or as you say, where you cannot mitigate it, just better to have thought about it and be prepared for the scenario should it happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, ignore risk management, your peril. And yeah, we've come an awful long way in the management of risk in a small number of years. I give a shout out to Janet Byers, who's that person that holds our feet to the fire routinely.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Okay, well, let's move on to the third. I'm conscious we're kind of up on 20 minutes. This is the one thing I never thought we'd extend on 20 minutes on, but let's go for a few more and cover off. So I think the third area for me is around how we invite external opinion and expertise inside our business to help us drive growth. So we set up, alongside our kind of board structure and the sessions that we have with our with our investors, we have a separate advisory board, and we've invited people who don't really have anything to do directly within parking, but are incredibly skilled and bring huge expertise in their own right to help us drive forward. We predominantly use our advisory board to help us define our strategy, to help us track progress against our strategy, and help us look for diversification and new business. So we brought in a non-exec director, a lady who's incredibly experienced in business growth, business development, sales, has worked extensively within the technology space and helping us understand how we can better use tech and how we can help and accelerate our growth going forward. And Tracy, for me personally, alongside with our chairman, Andy, has been a great source of personal support. I think anyone in this leadership role and in these CEO roles, you need an outlet. You have to find someone that you can confide in. You can share your bad days. You can share your highs. You can share your lows, share your frustrations. You have to have an outlet. That, in my opinion, should never be with the team you manage. You need an outlet outside of that team. And both Andy, who I've worked with now for 22 years, I think, and Tracy provide me with that outlet, but also a great source of challenge and a real source of accountability. You know, they never forget me saying 6 months ago, I think we're going to go and try this new market a go, or we're going to try and push this new products. They never forget and will keep me honest against that. And I think everybody needs that. We also have someone who's helped us navigate the political landscape. And obviously in the last 12 months, that's been incredibly important to understand how best do we engage with officials, with people within government departments, how best do we engage with MPs? You know, within our sector in our business, we have a high volume of correspondence from MPs. And David Laws, who supports us, has been incredibly helpful in supporting that process, thinking about how we engage, how we use that as an opportunity to educate and share the purpose of what we do. And that's been incredibly important. And then final, Helen Dolphin, MBE, who supports us from a diversity, inclusion, mobility perspective. Helen's an incredible individual who's suffered, serious personal trauma, but has never let that hold her back. And Helen will always be a great inspiration to me, and always someone who thinks differently to most other people within our business. Helen's supported British Transport and worked across the parking sector in making sure that we are more inclusive. We're thinking always about our diversity. And in particular, we're helping people with physical impairments to use those transport-related facilities. And Helen will be very direct in her feedback, will be very challenging about her, how we see the service that we provide and making sure we're doing the right thing. And for me, putting yourself in that situation with such great external expertise and influence, testing what you're wanting to do as a business, for me, has been incredibly important. And I would like to thank everyone who sits as part of our advisory board for the time and expertise that they give. And also for the wider management team of Gina for putting ourselves in that situation and preparing for that external challenge and validation of what we do. I'd encourage everybody to give that a go. If people want to learn a little bit more about how we've done that, please drop me a note. More than happy to talk about our terms of reference, the roles that people fulfill, and how we use that within our business. But for me, it goes back into the point you were making about that external challenge and validation, and making sure that's done in every way, through our standards, through the people we engage, through the opinions that we invite. And for me, as we wrap up this ESG series, that would be my lasting message, is testing yourself internally is not enough. Receiving external validation, testing yourself against external standards, and inviting people into your business to help shape and define the future is where all the good stuff happens. That's where all of the new ideas are coming from. That's where all of the people saying, well, so what? Or why does that matter? That's not going to make a big enough difference. That for me is where people really should start to engage. So we're kind of at the end of this 4-part series. It's been, Ian, to yourself, I've really appreciated you supporting this series. I think your insights, in particular your passion for everything that we do on ESG, is infectious within our business. And I think the difference you've made has been outstanding, just in terms of how we've gone on this ESG journey and how we've started to push ourselves in directions I never envisaged at the start. So a massive thanks for the role that you played leading us through our ESG and compliance in particular, but also for supporting this little mini series on ESG. So I was going to give the closing words to you if you wanted to say wrap up, Ian.
Thanks, Paul. Very welcome. I've really enjoyed it. I've enjoyed the series, but I really enjoy the ability and the focus on doing what I consider the good things, the ESG things, the things which aren't just hard business. Just one thing I would say to you about governance and everything you just described about external validation, but in particular, you as the CEO seeking advisory boards, people who, if you like, are going to come in and kick your tires and challenge you and hold you to account. And what I like about that is, and what I'd encourage everybody watching this, particularly in Gina, to think about is, if the CEO acknowledges he doesn't know everything and he can go outside and look for help and ask for people to hold into account, and he recognizes that there are other people out there that could help him, I just want everyone else to think the same thing. Don't think if you don't know the answer, it has to stay within your team or your head. Go and ask some folk within and without Gina. I just think that's a good message for everybody. And as a CEO, you don't have to do that. You get to make the decisions, but you've invited it in when you didn't have to. And I just like other people to think the same. Don't think it. If I've got a problem which is in sales and in my team, I shouldn't look outside of my team or sales. I've got to come up with the answer. If you're struggling, ask around, lift your head up, speak to people. But I've enjoyed the series, Paul, and I enjoy looking after ESG. I like patting ourselves on the back. We've done an awful lot, but me, I'm always nervous because I think we're far from perfect, and there's so much more we could do, and there's still a long, long journey to go. But I'm proud of what Gina's done so far, and there's more to come.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think just on your point of challenge, I think you're absolutely right, Ian. I'd invite people to get some challenge from someone not within their area. Take a different perspective, take a different mindset, not someone who thinks similar. And I think, our advisory board is made up of a group of individuals from very different backgrounds, very different experiences, who bring a different perspective to every single conversation we have. And I think that's all you can ask as someone running an organization. It's about taking in different perspectives all the time. But whether you're a CEO, a team leader, a manager, it's all the same. You still have a responsibility to lead your team. And taking different perspective of how you do that, I think, is one of the most positive things you can do in any management role there is. So that's probably a great place for us to finish. Thanks again, massive thanks, Ian, for kind of joining me on this series. And thanks for everyone who has listened. This does bring to an end this series of 4 ESG areas, and I'm hoping it's been useful, hoping it's given you something to think about. And I'm hoping someone has gone on to do something different. I would love some feedback, as always. Some comments about maybe something you've done in your business as a result of this series would be greatly appreciated by both me and Ian. We will be back in 2 weeks' time, and we will be digging into a topic within parking. So we're going to be talking about repeat offenders and persistent evaders. I'm going to leave it at that. I'm not going to explain it too much more. Some people watching possibly could fall into one of those two camps. Lots of people watching might not know the difference. Best way to figure all that out is to come back in 2 weeks' time and join us for that episode then. But without further ado, thanks very much, everyone. I've really enjoyed particularly doing this mini-series. Hopefully it's been useful, and we'll see you again in 2 weeks' time. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.